live. Yeah, we going live. Hey, we going live. Yeah, we going live. Yeah, we going. Yeah, we going. Yeah, we going live. From the 50-yard line, we going live. From the 50-yard line, we going live. From the 50-yard line. Hey.
Hello, beautiful people.
Hello.
I am Jarrett, the football genius Burgess.
I am Stephanie Fitzpatrick, aka the Advantage Coach.
We got another guest.
Yeah.
Mrs. Stephanie Johnson.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Nah, we truly appreciate it. Truly appreciate
so
you coming on. I won't go deep into it, but you know what you do is near and dear to our hearts. It's one of the I guess the main pillars of what Stephanie and I had in mind when we came up with the Fields to the Real podcast. But you all out there, you got to wait to hear about it.
You and your teasing people, I
right.
tell you. The master teaser you are.
But
we go ahead, Jared.
No, we're gonna ask you a few questions, Stephanie.
Okay.
And you just give us your take on some of the things that we have come up with.
Okay.
All right. So we just had this discussion before we got on, y'all. Like Stephanie knows sports, but not necessarily into sports like that. Her life is full, let's just say.
but I pay attention.
She pays attention. So I'm going to ask you this. Do you think that mental health awareness and care should be prevalent in sports?
Absolutely. I mean, 2019, the NBA and the NFL put in the contracts for their players that they have to have mental health professionals before they sign those contracts. Posted about it. I was happy about it because that has been needed since those organizations started.
Right.
We need it at the collegiate level. We need it at the youth level, especially where you have people working with kids who don't have a background in child development. They don't have a background in coaching. Sometimes they just like it and want to do it, but don't understand how their approach is not really healthy for kids. And they don't want to be, some people don't want to be, they don't want to have anything said to them about that. And that's detrimental. You can have a coach, a teacher, and a parent doing the same type of abuse to a kid, but happening in different ways. And so how would we know? How would we then gauge what where that kid's trauma stem from? It happens in college, and it's hidden. The approach that's taken, the high expectations, the standards, the idea that sports comes before anything else. That is not good for mental health. Just like work isn't, like all of these elements of our lives that come before self have to be re-engaged. They have to be thought about in a different way, because if 2020 didn't teach us anything about sitting down and being quiet, life will. Yeah. And it only takes so many times before we get so many people showing up at the front of their training facility, killing themselves on the site, which has happened multiple times before. Yeah. And what has happened in the past? It took so many of those times to happen before domestic violence to happen, before the NFL wanted to actually do something about it. It took 2020 to happen before, it took these organizations to really take this stuff seriously. Yeah. And we have to get out of the mode of thinking, if we're going to correct stigma around mental health, we have to get out of the idea that it takes intervention for people to have good mental health practices. If we can prevent it, that is the health part. The illness part, the psychopathology and the maladaptive behavior comes at the point of intervention. That means it's too late.
Yeah.
The dynamics of sports, especially how it's changed over decades, definitely should incorporate lessons around mental health.
Love it.
Yeah.
All there for it.
Yeah.
100%. All there for it. Let's go.
You
Yes.
talked a little bit about how and I believe his name was Jason Belcher, if I'm not mistaken. He played for the Kansas City Chiefs. He showed up to the facility and committed suicide.
Yep.
After hurting, his family. And you talked a little bit about how, we've been reactive with a lot of this stuff as opposed to being proactive. Now, the NFL, you said the NFL and the NBA have put some of these measures into place. How do you see, for it to be truly proactive, how do you see it being set up in sport in a way that could truly be proactive so that we could prevent some of the things that we hear about going on today?
Well, I think it takes people like Tony Dungy, people like I'm spacing out on his name, and his face is right there. The former coach of the LA Lakers and the Bulls.
Oh yes. Phil
Jackson.
Yes, Phil Jackson. It takes those type of thinkers who are leaders in sports. They were integral in making sure that their players handled stress well. Phil Jackson is an avid is an advocate of meditation. His life revolves around taking time to meditate. He made his players meditate. Tony Dungy was all about taking the calmer route to making decisions versus taking the stressed out, taking out on you approach. They were integral in creating culture around how to take care of yourself as an athlete, not only on the physical side, but on the psychological side. And it made his players better players. It made their players better players. When you were able, Kobe was the most self-actualized individual I have ever seen in sports, meaning that at a young age, he started paying attention to what was around him, his environment. He paid attention to himself as he grew up. He paid attention to the mistakes he was making and sought help for how to correct those mistakes because it was affecting his game. He made sure to evolve in his self-development and not allow himself to believe the hype that as an NBA player, that was all he was. That's a different mindset. That has to become the culture. You have to create culture at all levels, from the execs all the way down to the people who clean up the stadium. That idea that self can be taken with you in the route of success, that you can develop practices that are healthy for your psychological self. A lot of these young players that are coming out of high school, going into the NBA or the NFL, or they're going from, being in college and then, quitting college and going into these pro sports. What they're missing is, and this happens to a lot of people who gain success really early, the baggage that they had before they got there has to be dealt with. And if you start seeing maladaptive behavior like you see in Rondo, or you see in some of these other players like Terrell Owens, there's something else there. So somebody has to say, yo, we can't pay you unless you're going to take care of yourself. Point blank, period. You want your money? Go get some help. And you can keep that
that'll
help.
make them go do it.
Yeah.
Let me cut your endorsements. Because that's the thing. The culture has to go beyond when they go to the field. It has to go like, yo, you was beating on somebody last week. We can't sign you for that endorsement. I'm sorry. That's against our brand. We are about the provision of healthy people. We want healthy people to be productive citizens, not just on the field, not just on the court, not just in the baseball field, not just on the soccer field, but everywhere. You got kids and you got family, they're watching you the most. So, it is why I think we have such attachment to people like Kobe, because we saw the progression. He wasn't just an amazing player and a legendary player. He was an amazing person. All faults, all good, all bad. You saw that development. Absolutely. And that's what we appreciate about him.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. You touched on something that's kind of where our wheelhouse is. And so, with Field to the Real, our project, our goal is to try to help make sure that these athletes are being we're approaching it from a holistic standpoint. It's not, we leaving it to the coaches with what happens on the field, but there are so many more parts of you as a human being, like you just said. And so we want to make sure that we are approaching it holistically, in that we are talking to you about what it looks like when this is over. Like, you're more than the sport. So what do you need to be thinking about this now? What does it look like for you when this is over, whenever that might be? Exactly. And then, like you said, I think and bringing in that mental health piece is so critical. And so what's your opinion of like a project like ours being a proponent and a source and a resource for these collegiate student athletes to get that mental health, as well as all of the other parts that we bring to the table?
I think it's an amazing approach to creating to the development of whole people through an avenue like sports. Sports has so many benefits. I wasn't an athlete, but I was in a marching band, and I'm from Atlanta. So at marching bands in Atlanta, I went to Mays. I was a drum major.
You was in a real band.
We understand the discipline it takes to be out on the field all day long in the hot sun and doing that over and over again. We understand the family that is forged from those type of relationships. So that was a part of our culture, even though we weren't athletes, and they trained us like athletes though. But
I used to watch the marching band work out. Like it used to look worse, than ours.
Let me tell you, you've been amazed. You know what that heel is like.
Oh man.
So anyway, but it is an essential part of creating what is necessary at the core character level. When you recognize how you have to take care of yourself beyond what is your interest, what could be your career, that's what sustains you through it. Because the hardships that come, you have to have resilience and some type of foundation so that it doesn't make you crumble. And you have to learn that early. And when you can't learn it early, it just takes longer. Everybody starts at their own point, right? We can't expect it to be perfect, but it has to change. The dynamic, the paradigm has to shift. And programs like this one allows for those people who want to do sports, because it's a really good outlet. They need the community, they need the social support, and that's a hobby for them. Maybe they're not looking at going pro or on a scholarship, but like me in music, it gave me something to do, and it was constructive. And it also helped me academically. It helped me in these other areas of my life. And that's what has to be connected. People have to connect the dots in that way, because no matter where you go, those are essential pillars to being able to survive and thrive. We got to stop teaching people how to just survive. And people are actually doing that just from historical places, just from generational stuff that they're carrying with them and what's happening in their present. So everybody that's showing up on a court, on a field, is coming with something, and it has to go someplace. It has to have a place so that it doesn't show up in ways that are unproductive and unhealthy.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, so right now we're living in this new normal of the pandemic, and some of the collegiate athletes, or not just some, excuse me, all of the collegiate athletes have to adjust to this new normal. What advice would you give a student athlete right now who is going through this current state of athletics during COVID?
I would say read anything about Kobe Bryant and Mamba Mentality, his book. Because when Kobe suffered that Achilles injury, that was when he started contemplating whether or not he was going to quit, right? It is during the hardships and adversities of our lives that we should sit back, be still, take inventory, and really get a sense for what we really need and want in the moment, so that we adapt and not just adjust. Adapting means you're taking on the newness with acceptance. You're embracing it. You're taking all of what you know as your strengths into a new situation so that you can use it and find utility in it. Adjusting is momentary, it's temporary. You can shift for right now, but eventually you get uncomfortable because psychologically you haven't accepted it yet. And when you don't accept things as your life is changing, you start to become resentful. You start to feel anger. You start to feel like you don't have control. Hence, a lot of anxiety that people are experiencing right now, a lot of depression that has come from this situation. Because unfortunately, this is life. There's a lot that's not going to change. Colleges are having to rethink how they do sports so that they are accountable as well as aware and educated on what to do in this situation in the future. So where some schools could pay for this, some schools can't. So how are they going to support this part of their students' lives where that's why some of them went to school? That's how some of them are paying for school. So what's the alternative? How can they still get something out of this when they work so hard for these schools and doing these sports and participating at this level? This is where programs like yours come in, because that's where they can go as an alternative to get the rest of what they need to sustain them through these type of adjusting periods and adapting periods, so that they can come out on the other side finding either new things to do with their time or forging through it and coming up with creative ways to still play their sports and feel like they're getting out of it what they put into it in the first place.
Yeah.
Now y'all see why we were excited.
Right.
Listen, I love it. I'm over here like, yes, somebody reaching out. Love it.
Right.
Yes, thank you. That's awesome.
We appreciate that. You really dropped some gems on us and
Absolutely.
our audience. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
Yes. I enjoy it. You know, this is I see my field everywhere I go, everything I do. Like where I come from, the place of when I was a kid, I looked at people and was like, why do they do that? What do they? So I see psychological well-being everywhere, you know, and it shows up in our politics, it shows up in our schools, it shows up in our homes, it shows up everywhere. We just got to recognize it for what it is, learn more about it, and be able to utilize all it has to offer so that we all can benefit from it, because it's out there. Like it's a thing, you know?
Love it. Yes.
Love it.
All right.
Now put the cameras on me, 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 put the cameras on me.